Welcome to Within You, a podcast that explores the unknown, that liminal space, that dark shadow, that growing under the earth kind of thing where you don't even see what's happening until you sprout out in the spring. And that's where we are in the middle of winter. Lots of growing is happening, and there might be some growing pains, but you're navigating that. You're moving between now and what's next, and that direction towards what you want is what's more important than how fast you're growing or how much you can see changing. Yo soy Vivian Carrasco. I am a wisdom teacher, mindset mentor, and I really love calling myself a transformational guide. I help women move through change and a few super cool dudes. I'm based right here in Funky Town, which is Fort Worth, Texas, and it is my pleasure to be here with you today. So we are in the 11th month of a global pandemic. And this episode, actually this whole series in January, I'm calling Beginning Again. And I'm going to start with reading from this book called The Sabbath, because it's what inspired me to take on these two topics and to share them with you in the way that I'm sharing them. So this is from page 35. It's a chapter called A New Beginning, and I'm going to read this verse out of the Bible to you. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But according to Wayne Mueller, he says that a more accurate reading in Hebrew of the Hebrew would be in a beginning, as if there are endless beginnings in the cycle of life. So, and it is true, according to Wayne Mueller, that biblical scholars agree that the phrase God created would also be better translated as when God began to create. So it changes the story just a tiny little bit in that first verse to in a beginning when God began to create the heavens and the earth. Creation then is an ongoing story of new beginnings, of opportunities to begin again and again and again. And then he says later on this page 36, and I have it starred and underlined because it's one of my favorite phrases in this chapter, is take delight in beginning together anew. And I'll emphasize all of those different points as we go through the sections in this podcast episode. And then the January series of Beginning Again. That initial reading was from Sabbath, Finding Rest, Renewal, and Delight in Our Busy Lives by Wayne Mueller. It might be a book that you would also enjoy. So one of the things I've noticed, and it's been very, very sort of in my experience, in my face, is that there are lots of changes happening for people. We're 11 months into a global pandemic. And if you've experienced any of the changes that I'm about to talk about, I guess what I want to draw your attention to is the process of becoming or unbecoming. Like, is the personal definition of who you are, of how you want to live, of what your contribution is to the world, is that in flux? Like, is it changing? We don't need a global pandemic for that to happen, but sometimes it just creates more of that. So what I am finding is that now that we're 11 months into it, we've had a period of not rest, I would say of settling. I'm personally feeling this new-ish normal beginning to settle as I reflect back on the way that I've moved through this upheaval in my life and in the lives of everyone in the world because of COVID-19. So are you becoming or unbecoming something? Like, we've gotten past the point of when everything goes, quote, back to normal. This is an opportunity for us to decide, to choose a new normal for us that may be more aligned with what we actually value, with what we truly desire. Is the personal definition of you changing? Are you becoming something else, someone else? Or are you unbecoming from something that you no longer choose? Have you decided to change the way you are going to live and how you're going to contribute to the world? This is an opportunity for us to design, to create a beginning, because life is a constant creation. I'm really curious if you have a new and next on the horizon, because we want to delight in beginning together anew, as that book, The Sabbath, says. And I'm going to take an opportunity here to actually just mention the experience, the learning journey that we're going to go on together within university to transition us out of winter and into spring, beginning on February 12th with the Lunar New Year. We'll start, and then we'll have an experience together from February 17th through April 3rd, when that perfectly aligns with Lent, to set an intention on the becoming and maybe even the unbecoming, the choosing of what we're beginning to create. So like I said, there's lots of pivots, lots of changes that I'm seeing in my life and in those I love. And they typically have to do with career, whether it's planned or unexpected. There's a transition moving through the world in lots of places. And I want to focus this conversation around the changing of roles. I was going to say jobs, but it's not really about jobs, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It could be just an unplanned loss of a job, which then has you thinking, I am no longer a blank. I'm going to say banker. Then what am I? Who do I want to become? I've lost my job as a blank. Do I want to continue to pursue that identity? Or is it time for me to shift and decide to become something else? Because it's a constant new beginning. We are in constant creation. Or maybe it was a planned transition that just got a little bit of extra spice because of COVID. And I'm thinking of my oldest, who transitioned out of the Army, knew he was transitioning out of the Army, but didn't plan for, COVID, did plan for a sort of gap year. And that changed his experience of his gap year. So maybe you have a planned transition that you're moving through, but the pandemic has added extra factors that have changed it a bit. It could be a milestone transition that's changing your becoming, your identity. And this is, oddly enough, my youngest son, who has achieved his undergraduate. He's a graduate now of TCU as of December, which is last month. And now he's beginning his transition into a new identity. He's growing. And then he has the extra layer of COVID on top. So there's those three. And then I'm going to add in the fourth, which I want to emphasize a little bit more. It is adding an identity. It is discovering a deeper vocation, maybe in addition to your career. That is interesting to me. It is discovering your gifts. And it can happen in any of these transitions. But that fourth one is, are you adding something else? Because it's not always a taking away. It could just be in addition to. So this is a time where lots of folks are transitioning. And I guess the thing that I want to say is, depending on, it doesn't actually matter which transition you're moving through. I want to encourage you to experiment like a scientist through it. Be playful with it. Have fun. If you have the opportunity to take a break and just allow yourself to enjoy, to rediscover the things that feel fun for you. Like, this is maybe a once in a quarter century opportunity for you to do that. Is this your retreat, your Sabbath, where you get to rest and renew before you get back at it? Like, this is a cycle. This is a rhythm that has to be honored as being, just because we're a human being. And it is built into how we experience life. That is why, in my opinion, we go to sleep every night. It is a Sabbath, a resting, so that we can renew ourselves. And we have the opportunity at every dawn, open our eyes and to begin again. Spiritual traditions have Sabbaths, times of structured rest, because you can't just continue to push forward. There has to be a pause before you can play. So I'm just asking you to consider, is it your time to pause? Is this when you build in a Sabbath? When you discover what your passion is? What you want to pursue? When you just focus on the process of play? When you look for a practice that builds your spiritual muscles, your mental muscles, your health muscles, whatever muscle you're trying to build in community, because you can't do it without support. We're humans. We need each other. If I go back to that opening paragraph or line that I read in that book that delighted me so much, it's take delight in beginning together anew. I loved that. It just kind of like summarized everything. But I want to give you some additional perspective around how this career change or this transition or this pivot may be for you. Like, where is it in your space? There is a video out there, and you can Google Acumen Academy, Elizabeth Gilbert. It's titled Distinguishing Between Hobby, Job, Career, and Vocation. It's the bomb. Like, it is amazing. Elizabeth Gilbert is a jewel, but in this video, she does an amazing job of helping us outline the difference between these categories. So she describes hobby as something that is done for pure pleasure. We can do it in private, and it offers us absolutely zero risk. Whatever transition you're in, maybe it's time for you to pick up a hobby, to delight yourself in pure pleasure without risking somebody saying whether it's good enough or not good enough, or you really battling yourself around whether you're getting better at whatever thing it is. Just do something out of pure pleasure. Maybe this is where you are in your pivot, in your transition. Now, she distinguishes job or jobs as something that pays the bill. So it is the one thing that you have to have, because you're a responsible member of society and you want to pay your bills. You've got to have at least a job or some jobs. In this video, she says it's not what's going to bring you fulfillment. It's not what's going to make you happy. It's what's going to pay the bills. So if you have a job, you can still develop a hobby. And then she goes on to mention a career. A career is a job that you love, that you're passionate about, that you believe in. It is a job that you love. So maybe you lost a job, but you're not choosing to change your career because it is something that you believe in. This is just a marker, just like something on the map to identify maybe where your transition is if you need to have some perspective around it. And then my favorite is she talks about vocation. Vocation is a holy, sacred pursuit, according to Elizabeth Gilbert. It is a calling, a divine invitation. It is the voice of the universe in your ear. And this is where you use your talents and your gifts towards this holy pursuit. So the vocation is not something that can be given or taken away. So if you've moved, if you've experienced a transition, if you've lost a job, but it is your vocation, you continue to do it. You just get another job to pay the bills and you continue to do it. And she describes this in her experience as being a writer is her vocation. So if it's also her job, but if at some point folks stop reading her books, if they stop reading her writing, right? She's still going to write. She's still going to be an author because it is her vocation. But then she's going to get a job to pay the bills. So I love this video because it helps us identify the distinguishment between hobby, job, career, and vocation. I feel very lucky to have like all of these. I have all of them. And you, I think, are very lucky because with the Within You podcast, the Within You community, like everything that I produce around love being human is a divine calling. It is something that I will pursue, that I believe in. And lucky for me, like there is evidence of it being meaningful, but it is a divine calling. Like when that thing happened to me in 2013 and into 2014, it gave me this as a divine calling, and I am super grateful for it. And I've been able to use my own gifts and my own talents, my voice and my teaching and being Vivian towards unfolding that into the world and offering it into the world. And it has been an absolute joy. It didn't go away during the pandemic, and it is not something that someone can take away from me. I will continue to live out and unfold love being human because it is my vocation. So there's that. So if you are experiencing an unexpected career change, then you might want to examine your daily routine. Like in the episode, in one of the January episodes, I don't know which one you're listening to, but in the other January episode is an entire podcast on goals and setting goals and the way that I set my own goals, but establishing a practice, a daily practice or a process towards deliberate practice is very important. And before you establish a new practice, it could be helpful to kind of take a look at what your current one is, because it'll give you some insights on your direction towards where you're going. It'll give you insights on whether or not you're making choices that are based on your value system. I'm going to be super honest. In this season, I am not making a choice towards enough movement. Like I have this ring called an OU ring, and I didn't spell that right, but it tells me every day how often I move and if I'm hitting my movement goals. And I can't say I try. I am attentive to the data that it gives me, and I'm becoming more aware of the discrepancy between how much it thinks I should move and how often I actually move. And I'm noticing that when I move in certain ways, like if I have a really great ride and I get my heart rate super high, I sleep better. And the data shows me that I sleep more restfully. And it's interesting. So I'm just noticing all these things that are happening as I work towards being consistent in my movement goals. So this is an example of a way that I learn and grow. I try to establish a consistent, deliberate practice towards whatever it is. In this case, it's movement. And I have this data, and I usually do my movement in community, or I do more of it when I'm in community. Like David making me get on my bike. That's my community right now. But I digress a little bit. The point I'm trying to make is be a scientist towards your daily routine, towards the day in the life of you. Is it aligning with what matters to you? Like, are there parts of your day that if you multiplied it over, 10 years, 15 years, is it going to add to your life? Right? Or is it just feeling one of those, like, are you laying back and letting life make choices for you kind of thing? That's the intention behind that. Because these transitions in a job or a career or, this life milestone might have you at a point where you're like, I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go, or I don't know how to achieve that milestone that I may want. I want to encourage you to reach out for support, because there are other people that can help you see what you can't see. They can see ways to help you get to where you want to go. And I want to share a story with you of when I was in junior high, and my mom was a single parent, and my little brother was tiny. He wasn't even 2 years old. And she had expressed a wish. And she said, I wish that I had a career or a job that allowed me to raise Ronald in the way that I want to raise him. And as a single parent, she was having a tough time. And I was in junior high. I was probably in 7th or 8th grade. And I remember telling her, like, I don't remember exactly what she was doing, but I remember identifying that there was this career progression that was possible from an LVN to an RN, and maybe some steps in between. And what I said to her was, if you work at night, I will take care of Ronald. Like, I'll stay home and take care of Ronald while you work at night. And then you'll be able to be with him during the day while I'm at school. And I will support you because you need a community of support, right? You can't get through anything alone. We're human beings. We belong together to get to achieve this goal that you want to achieve. The reason I share that story is because other people might see a path towards the place, to the place that you want to go, or the person that you want to become that you might not have seen as a possibility. So reach out for those resources. Find your community, find your people. It is something that I say over and over on this podcast because it is so important. I did that in junior high, and as I looked at the rest of my life, I recognized that there was a thread that kind of ran through my career, because my first professional job in the 90s was serving transitioning soldiers as they were ACAPing. That's what it was called, Army Career and Alumni Program. Soldiers who had either, were in the Army 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and even retired soldiers. There's a different program called the Transition Assistance Program, but I had a role in ACAP as my first professional job. And if I look at that job, like what I did in junior high, and then that job working with soldiers, and then like the pinnacle of my career in workforce development and career transition in the field, right, in the career that I'm in, and which is now my vocation. It is a holy pursuit, is this movement through a transition. It's in a different way, but it's kind of the same. I actually wrote my entire dissertation based on my experience as the project manager, because I used to be a local program manager for the military, for the spouse version of ACAP, like helping spouses of soldiers transition in their jobs, because they had to leave their jobs when they transitioned with their soldier and then get placed in new jobs. That was my job after ACAP, like a series of jobs, right? Like a whole bunch of them, but those were kind of significant. I became the national project manager for the military spouses program. It was called ASEP, Army Spouse Employment Partnership, and that eventually turned into a purple program, which means it was so successful that the other services adopted it, and it turned into the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. And that was really the highest rung, so I was a consultant to the Department of the Army. And it's interesting that thread of helping people through their transitions, I can still see in the work that I do now, except it's even more meaningful to me because it's become my vocation. I will jump to the other episode in January actually talks about you not looking at what's realistic and what's possible for you. Because when I first, and I support that 1,000%, like it's about what's the potential of possibility, not about is it realistic? Like, can you look at something with certainty and know that it's going to happen? No, nobody can. There's so much uncertainty in the world. I want you, if you're in this kind of transition, any of the transitions I mentioned before, to really offer yourself some space to identify what it is that you really want. For whatever reason that you want it, it's neither wrong, it cannot be wrong because it's right for you. That is something that I believe in wholeheartedly. And I remember when I was a very, very young spouse of a soldier, I said to one of my spouse friends, like, when we're like chatting at the bus stop, when our kids are getting on the bus, I told her that I was going to finish school. And that was a goal I had set at the time. And that I wanted a career that would move with me. Well, I wanted a career. That's what I basically said. I want a career in a field. And she said, good luck. She said, you can't have that. She said, because you're married to a soldier. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to her. Duh. Like, you need people around you that believe in your potential to achieve whatever it is that you want. Because I could not have imagined, literally, that almost 20 years later, after a series of jobs, would have turned into a career that has now become my vocation. And, from that year when I set the intention to have a career that would move with me, I actually became the project manager for an Army-wide program that would support Army spouses, that would build partnerships with companies that would recruit military spouses so that they could transition with their soldier without losing their career and without having to change their jobs. Now, fast forward another decade later, we have a lot more technology to support that, but this was literally impossible. There was very few people who could do this. Like, it was limited to only a couple of different careers that would allow this. And it was tough because employers weren't aware of how they could do it. There were a few, like if you worked for AFES or if you had preference and you could transition your government job and those kinds of things. But now it's spread because when I was the project manager of ASAP, we focused on Fortune 500 companies that I value for their commitment to supporting wives in their career, military spouses in their career. Because one of the things that the Army figured out early on is that soldiers were making decisions to either leave or stay in the Army based on how many opportunities their spouses had to keep their careers. So I wasn't the only young spouse in the early 90s who was trying to achieve that thing. But I did become the spouse that led that program, even when someone told me it was impossible. And I share all of that to say, you might not know how to get to where you want to go. And honestly, you probably don't even have an idea. Like, you could not fathom the imagination you have of what is possible in that area or that arena. It hasn't bloomed yet. It hasn't blossomed. So keep yourself open to whatever that intention is, looking for paths and people that will lead you closer to that. Grounded in your values, grounded in what matters to you. It mattered to me because I was the wife of a soldier. It mattered to me because I wanted to have a career. And it mattered to me because I wanted to make my children proud. And those are the underlying values that actually guided me through that, those decades of working in career transition. And now specializing in more of a spiritual transition towards an identity, but it all fits together. And I never could have known that looking forward. I couldn't have imagined the things that I'd be doing in the world. So don't feel like you have to see what's in front of you. It doesn't have to be clear. The clarity will come from the actions you take day by day by day towards that goal. That's the whole point of today. That even if you can't see your way forward, you can live your way in that direction. Your possibility is not fixed. Allow it to be better or even different than what you imagined. Because if you don't, then your mind will keep you from seeing other possibilities. That's what it's designed to do, to ensure that you're successful and that you're safe. And if you listen to it, it'll limit you. You can train yourself to be open to possibility and to potential. It's why you're here with me now, because it's important to you and because in a part of you, you already know that it's possible. You might just need someone to believe in you. I believe in you. I know that you can do whatever you set your mind to. And if it sounds impossible to some because of the life that I've lived, I can stand beside you and tell you that there's a potential there, that there's a probability that could be. It's not impossible. It just might not look exactly the way you imagined. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, when I finished my career in military transition, I imagined that my ultimate experience, like the job that I would love the most, would be as a college professor. I had an opportunity to have several roles in educations of higher learning, and I learned firsthand that environment was really not for me. In a nutshell, that experience was like being put in a closet, closing the door, and I'm a little flower that was searching for light under the doorway. I am not saying anything against professors and teachers. It's just a culture that it's not collaborative. And my dissertation was on collaboration. So it just wasn't a good fit for me. Like, achieving tenure as a professor was something that I could not commit to. But interestingly enough, I would say to you that I still made my dream come true, but in a different way. And in my opinion, in a better way, because I actually made up my own university within university, and I teach. I might not be called a professor, but I'm still a teacher. And I find so much meaning, so much value, so much of all the good things in that experience. And I would have never known back then that this was possible. I couldn't have imagined creating this. If you're interested in Within University or just learning more about it, you can visit www.withinuniversity.com and check it out. Because I guess I have achieved my dream of being a professor in a college. It might not be accredited, but it's my own unique take on traveling from your head to your heart and taking that deeper look within to identify who you want to become or unbecome, how you want to choose to live, what you want to create in your life. And I would have never known the steps to getting there. So allow yourself the imagination and the possibility to be different than what, it's not fixed. If you know what you value, if you know what's important to you, then it'll guide you towards making choices that take you towards those opportunities that make that thing happen. If you're looking for more resources on this, I talk about it a whole lot. So you want to take another listen at October 20th episode from 2019. In the show notes to this, I'll also link a talk that I gave called The Living Room Lecture that goes a little bit more into my position on love over logic, on potential and possibility over achievement. I have a live workshop that I gave a couple of years ago that you're welcome to have for free. It's called Design Your Life. I'll link that. And there's also a 21-day experience, because again, I keep promoting that we learn by doing something consistently over time. It's just how humans learn. So I have tons of stuff that I do over seasons, right? Over a period of time. And imagining your ideal is something that I came up with a couple of years ago that helps you build your imagination muscle. So I invite you to explore that if that's interesting to you. And I'll end this episode like I ended the other January episode, because this January series is about beginning again. And this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson really speaks to the heart of what I'm trying to say. Our desires presage the capacities within us. They are harbingers of what we shall be able to accomplish. We are attracted to what is already ours in secret. Thus, passionate anticipation transfers what is indeed possible into dreamt for reality. I believe that your dreams can come true. I've experienced it. These are some of the insights that I wanted to offer you in relation to goals. If you are experiencing a career transition, whether it was planned or unplanned, and you have the opportunity to shift, to choose who you want to become, how you want to live, what you're going to contribute to the world. And if, like me, you're on this continuous journey from your head to your heart, if you're interested in being supported personally by me through your transition, then I invite you to take a peek at the mentoring tab on my website, which is www.viviancarrasco.com, where you can learn about all the different ways that I can support you. Until the next episode of the Within You podcast, I wish you peace in all ways.